Hi folks, I just got out of the shower, so that explains my appearance and my sweaty appearance. In typical hot day Los Angeles fashion, you go in and take a shower and come out of it and are bathed in sweat within minutes. And now I've got something stuck in my throat. Nevertheless, Venus in Cancer. Now this video is a really interesting one to do right now, based on what I see going on in the lives of my clients, myself, and even in terms of the energy coming into this particular video. Those of you who watch my videos regularly know I was planning to do a Venus in Cancer video prior to the Leo New Moon video. And so at that time, when I was thinking about Venus in Cancer, the subject or the title of the video that I was thinking of at that time, based on my reflection, was, interestingly, balancing the scales. And balancing the scales because we're talking about Venus from a relationship perspective. Now, what was so interesting about that is that I didn't get to doing the Venus in Cancer video before the New Moon and Leo video, which I did a few days ago on August the 19th. And since then, this phrase, balancing the scales, based on people that I follow on YouTube and other places where the phrase show up, has shown up constantly. And so I've taken that as a sign that the next video, i.e. this one that I'm doing, has to be about Venus in Cancer. Now, I have changed the title of this video based on where I feel things are at right now. Had I done the video last week, I think balancing the scales would have been apt. Now I feel like, because that phrase has shown up so many times, it feels somehow unoriginal and corrupted, even though it's gotten so much validation. And the other thing is that any planet moving through Cancer, and Venus is the last of the planets right now. Clearly it's not the last of the planets. They're going to be planets that are going to move through Cancer sooner or later. Venus is the last of the planets that I've been following close to each other to go through the sign of Cancer. Venus came in here on August the 7th and leaves on September the 6th of this year, 2020. And to place it into context, Venus comes in here after Mercury was retrograde at the end of June and end of July in the sign of Cancer, and after we had two new moons in Cancer, a new moon solar eclipse in Cancer and another new moon in Cancer. New moon solar eclipse June 21st, second new moon on July 20th. And the sign of Cancer is where we've just experienced the last of the Cancer Capricorn eclipses, and the sign of Cancer is where we're being encouraged to finish up things we have to lean into, or opportunities we have to lean into that have been in place since the middle of July 2018, so we can avail of a new set of energies and a new invitation of where does our growth and development and opportunities lie, which would be in the sign of Gemini and where it falls in the chart. So the sign of Cancer is extraordinarily important. The eclipses of release, of course, are in the opposite sign of Capricorn. That is currently hosting, that is probably the most intense part of the chart right now, and is currently hosting Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in very close proximity to each other. Very close proximity to each other. The planet of endings and new beginnings, ending a 12-year cycle, and the start of a 12-year cycle, the planet of death and transformation, that is, that you can do absolutely nothing about, and the planet of hard work and seriousness and integrity and consequence and taking yourself and your potential seriously and sticking to the straight and narrow. Intense set of energies, both from a global perspective when we look at the political and indeed the pandemic situation, and from a personal perspective. Now, Venus, or any planet that has gone through the sign of Cancer, sooner or later will oppose these three planets in Capricorn. Any planet opposing Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn close to each other is going to get one hell of a reality check. And that is going to be the title of this video, because let me just give you some dates. Venus entered the sign of Cancer on August the 7th, leaves on September the 6th. Might be a day different from what I've just given you based on where you are geographically. Now, three dates I want to give you. Venus opposes Jupiter on August the 25th, in a couple of days' time. Venus opposes Pluto on August the 30th, and Venus then opposes Saturn on September the 2nd, and then leaves the sign of Cancer on September the 6th. August 25th, opposition with Jupiter. August 30th, opposition with Pluto, and it's the Pluto oppositions that pack the biggest punch. And September 2nd opposes Saturn. Venus in Cancer traditionally is supposed to be a beautiful and a soft energy that increases our capacity to be empathetic and sympathetic and cooperative in relationships. What has been fascinating about this go round, partly because Venus is coming into a part of a chart that is under a certain amount of duress and under a certain amount of pressure and needs a certain amount of action and activity and communication, and either the availing and completion of opportunities or the setting up of boundaries or something along those lines, out of finishing up of activities and tasks and growth, giving it an A+ effort, even if you get a B- result, as I've said in previous videos, in the sign of Cancer. And where, more importantly, the sign of Cancer sits in your chart, which house it occupies and what that house stands for. Now, the sign of Cancer also talks about leaning into more maternal, more nurturing, more emotionally protective energies, greater care, and less severity, less tradition, less ambition, thematically. And as you know, politically at least, and in general, we've seen an excess of severity, an excess of tradition and conservatism, and not nearly enough heart. And the astrology would suggest that the lessons have been set up so that we can build muscles towards Cancerian values, leadership through heart-based connections. In short supply, that's where the area of growth lives. Venus in Cancer, the planet of relationships, the planet of money, the planet of the principle, as I've started to say recently, that the quality of your abundance is dependent on the quality of your relationships, and also the planet of the arts and luxuries, the planet of natural flow, opportunities, luck of a certain kind, financial opportunities, relationship opportunities being brought to you. Venus in Cancer this time around is, on the one hand, it is opening up our heart spaces to really take other people into account and try and understand them. And it could be introducing the prospect of building bridges, especially with people where the scales need to be balanced. And this idea of scale balancing is unusual with Venus in Cancer, because typically with Venus in Cancer, we talk about increased give and take. We talk about increased flow. We talk about bridge building. And bridge building is very much a theme right now. But there is this theme also of somehow evening out the scales. And evening out the scales may, on the one hand, seem like it's a task of softness and giving. But in certain cases, the evening of the scales has a touch of, or a need for, a certain amount of selfishness in it too, depending on who you are and depending on how the scales need to be balanced. Do your scales need to be balanced because you need to be more giving, or do your scales need to be balanced because you need to be more, that's it, no more of that? And that gives this particular transit of Venus in Cancer a slightly more harsh and definitive edge. I suspect because the sign of Cancer is up for a kind of a, are we done with this yet? Can we get done with this, please? It is a helpful transit, but I'm not sure that it is being experienced in the softest of ways, which it sometimes can be. So the question to ask with this Venus in Cancer transit, first question is, what are the opportunities that are being offered to you till September the 7th to improve relationships that have been under duress since the middle of July 2018. In certain cases, improving those relationships may involve terminating them, may involve picking up the phone and saying, I have tried to communicate this to you lots of times, but this time I am telling you, I am building a bridge even if it doesn't feel like it, and the bridge says, sayonara, Charlie, we're not walking on this bridge together. I am blowing it up as I walk across. It's much more of a Mars action as opposed to a Venus action. But Venus in Cancer around this time is going to be squaring Mars at around the same time. You know, as I've mentioned to you, this axis of Cancer Capricorn squared by Mars in Aries is the prevailing theme in the second half of this year. And Venus, as it goes through the sign of Cancer, opposes the planets in Capricorn. And during this period, I wish I had the exact date to give you, but during this period, August 25th to September the 2nd, within that week will square Mars, the planet of self-assertion. So relationships will be tested. There will be a reality check, and there will be the question of talk about balancing the scales, man. There will be a question of how do I protect myself and assert myself, Mars in Aries, and find the balance between that and the appropriate give and take and bridge building that Venus in Cancer is trying to encourage. In some ways, Venus in Cancer is a helpful transit to help close out these activities that need to be closed out. It does provide the ability to pick up the telephone in some ways, or to try and, it's not so much a communication thing as much as it is a willingness thing. Now, Venus in Cancer, I believe, is giving us all the opportunity to assess our relationships and figure out what balancing the scales in them means. In certain cases, there will be bridge building, and in certain cases, relationships may well be terminated. And this period that we're going into, August the 25th to September the 2nd, Venus is tested. The planet of natural flow, passivity, feminine virtues. By natural flow, I mean sort of God energy. You know, the fact that the pandemic pushed us indoors, and the fact that the birds came out, and the coyotes came out, and the trees were happier, and the sky was bluer. Venus, Venus, and more Venus, Venus. The natural intelligence and flow of how a tree can grow, and a blade of grass can grow, and every living organism seems to naturally know what it is that it needs when it needs it and goes after it. Natural flow, natural abundance. Not anxiety, not communication, not the mind, not muscle. Balance. Venus rules Taurus, Venus rules Libra. Balance, abundance, a kind of stasis, receptivity, letting things flow. The planet of all these virtues that is trying to encourage assessment and thinking in relationships, and trying to encourage and bring things back into balance, which ironically in certain cases can mean terminating certain relationships because they're not in balance. This is the strangest Venus in Cancer transit, but a really meaningful one. Now this planet goes to get into a deadlock with Mars, the male planet of action and intervention, and opposes in the same week Jupiter, a planet of endings and new beginnings, and the Venus opposite Jupiter is a kind of, can be an opposition of excess. Then it opposes Pluto, the planet of death and transformation. Any opposition to Pluto is always one to be reckoned with. And then it opposes Saturn, the planet of consequence. So the planet of ease and flow and letting things move forward and get back into balance is constantly, over the next week and a half or so, till September the 2nd at least, is going to be, the scales that are trying to be balanced are constantly someone or the other. Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn are going to keep going in there and kind of messing about the scales, and Venus is going to keep trying to bring them into balance. Relationships will be tested. And over and above everything, you are going to be given a reality check that you would do well not to ignore. That a reality check that is very much contributing to critical themes that are present in the second half of this year. Critical learnings. Dotting the I and crossing the T where it needs to be done in areas that have been in activity and in action and under a certain amount of stress and pressure to deal with and avail of since the middle of July 2018. It could be that if there are opportunities here, let's say that there are It's the planet of the arts. If there are auditions, if there are opportunities, or if there are applications, it could be that they come under a certain amount of reality check and scrutiny, in which case you would do well to play with the energy, roll up your sleeves, and give it your best shot. We are talking about Jupiter, a planet of opportunity, Pluto, a planet of power, Saturn, the planet of doing the right thing and putting in the extra effort and going the distance, opposing Venus. So if Venus is tested, if your good fortune, your opportunity to avail of opportunities is tested over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, do not run away from the test. Take the test. Bring out the books, review the data, look at the details, bring out Mars, the planet of intervention, and do the work that needs to be done to get yourself out of this gridlock of opposition. It's a reality check. Relationships and opportunities will be tested, and the way out of it is to keep it real and do the work you need to do to muscle through to the other end of things. Now, muscling through is a trick that you're going to need to muscle through. Muscling through applies when it comes to putting in the effort to meet your goal for the preparation. Muscling through may not be the right strategy when it comes to communication. At the end of the day, using Venusian virtues of conversation, diplomacy, tact, intelligence, as opposed to rashness and aggression, might be a better way to go. But there is a certain amount of stress and duress. Now, during this time, on a certain level, you do have a certain amount of support from, well, not yet though. The Leo new moon that we just had gives you a certain amount of energy and oomph, to be sure, which is good. And the planets in Virgo, as they head towards the last 10 degrees of Virgo, Mercury and the Sun, and the next new moon, which is around around September the 16th, the middle of September onwards, you will have some energies that are a little bit more cooperative and increase a certain amount of flow. Right now, the primary transits are one of tension. As you head towards the middle of September, there's greater flow in terms of communication and just vitality to some extent to kind of deal with some of these challenges. So embrace, or at least accept, the reality checks that are going to be offered to you with regard to your relationships over the next, or opportunities that you're trying to avail of over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, till at least September the 2nd, if not till about September the 7th, September 6th, 7th. Okay, over and out, really. Oh wait, hold on. If you like this video, found it useful, share it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Click the bell icon next to the subscribe button so you're notified whenever I do a new video. Do you like how I'm ordering you around? My email address is in the subject area description box below, so you can contact me for rates for readings if you're interested, or I can make you an easy-to-read version of your chart that shows you which sign is in which house. You'll need to know your birth time for that, but do not send me your birth time until you inquire for rates and are absolutely sure you want to proceed. I do not want your personal information. The next videos are going to continue this theme, and I want to talk about Mars squaring. Venus will square Mars, but I want to talk about Mars squaring Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. Some of these activities have already occurred. If the last 2 or 3 weeks have seemed hard, the Mars-Pluto square we have really felt, and that occurred about a couple of weeks ago. So I really need to introduce those squares, because those squares happen 3 times. Mars is retrograde, so it squared them once, it's going to go direct, square them again, and it's going to go direct one final time and square them again. You know, the planet